and I'd like to introduce Mary Bolingbroke. Mary is an osteopath. Her company, Mary Louise B. Limited. Mary has been practicing as a craniosacral osteopath for the last 30 years, and more recently, working with horses and dogs, including as an animal communicator. Since the COVID pandemic, she has been doing group work aimed at helping to resolve ancestral healing. This has resulted in a deeper understanding of the transitions associated with death and birth and the embedded ancestral trauma intertwined with both. So it brings me great pleasure to present Mary, and the name of Mary's presentation is Fear of Death and How It Freezes Our Lives. Mary, we welcome you to the stage.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Tanya as well, because everything that she said has led in so beautifully to what I'd like to talk about. Tanya was just talking about really taking care of our environment. And I believe a lot of today's conference is about sustainability. And I don't think we'll really find sustainable ways of really living until we can understand that living is a constant process of transition and transitioning comfortably through growth, development, birth, life, and death. So really, to reach sustainability, we need to have a different approach and understanding of death. And please don't misunderstand me here. I really understand how enormous it is to confront one's own death or the impending death of a loved one or a child. That is not in doubt, but I just want to help us look at why we have such a fearful relationship with death and how that influences the way we live. So death is, as far as we're concerned, inevitable, non-negotiable, and final. It can't be undone. And our egos are very afraid of anything that can't be negotiated with. So our egos are very afraid of death. And in fact, they're so afraid of death that we simply deny it. Our ego denies it and pretends it's not going to happen, and it won't happen. And the next stage after denial is projection. So we project our fear of death outwards. And then what we do is we can see that there's death around us. We can see that other people die. We can see that forests are on fire. We can see that ice caps are melting. We can see that we're in the midst of a global pandemic. But this strategy of denial and projection means that we see it out there, and there's a part of us deep inside that says, yes, I can see it happening, but it won't happen to me. So that's the first ego strategy, denial and projection. But then, to make doubly sure that we're not going to be defeated by death, is for our egos to equate death with change and loss. Well, all transitions involve change and loss, don't they? You know, every time we transition from one part of our life to another, we lose that old way of being. But what our ego says is, be very afraid of anything that might involve change or transition or loss. Now, this sets up a fear. We become concerned or worried or afraid about choices or life decisions or behaviors, and that can affect us way before our actual death is even on the horizon. But what happens is that because we've started to feel anxious or worried about change or loss, we can approach changes, for example, getting a new job or even positive change like getting married or going abroad or revealing the truth to someone, we think, oh no, this is going to cause a change. And that causes the ego to set up a feeling of fear, and that causes us to freeze. Fear is a very primitive feeling, and we have 3 defense strategies for that: freeze, fight, or flight. And freeze is the best one that we choose. We think it's the best one. And this means that we start to avoid change. And this, I'm not just talking about avoiding change in our own lives. We might hold on to a relationship that's past its sell-by date, but we avoid change. And as I say, we're not just doing that in our private lives. We can see that happening in a societal way and a global way. So rather than allow a banking structure, for example, to collapse and reform, we tend to put it on special measures and keep it going. And unhealthy education systems, we kind of let them limp on in life support measures, really. And political ideologies, we do the same. You know, rather than let it reach a natural ending, we'd much rather hold back and keep it going, keep it limping along, rather than really face that big transition and letting it go and a new system take its place. Now, as a tribe, human beings used to really know how to sit with death and growth and change and transition. So, for example, sitting with a dying friend or parent or child, we knew how to sit and soften into those final hours. We knew how to ease the pain and soothe the wound, and we knew how to quieten the fears. And we used to know the songs to sing to the ancestors to get them ready to bring that person back to spirit. And we used to know that everything that can change, any living thing, any structure that can change, we used to know and embrace that it would go through transitions and transformations. And if they didn't, life wouldn't work, would it? You know, if things just grew and never transformed, we'd have huge acorns and no oak trees. So we used to be much, much more welcoming in our hearts of these big transitions. And something has happened. We've become less able to sit comfortably with the dying. We've become less comfortable with transition. In fact, what we seem to do instead is try and numb ourselves or anesthetize ourselves. And we do that, we medicalize things, don't we? You know, instead of really welcoming in the birth of a baby, for example, with open hearts and minds, we become fearful. And fear, as you're trying to deliver a baby, can often mean that there's a medicalization of the process. I'm not saying that there's always the possibility of a perfectly natural birth. There isn't. But we don't need to over-medicalize it, because we don't need to begin the process of the delivery with fear. And we have over-medicalized dying processes as well. And we don't need to do that if we didn't have so much fear and reluctance. So what happened? What changed? What brought us to this place in our current lives and societies? Because actually, right now, this minute, that we're going through some huge transitions, aren't we, globally and as a society, in ourselves and in our communities. So how can we approach these changes without fear and denial and projection, without us shutting our eyes and feeling that freeze of inertia? Well, we do it by remembering that there's 2 parts of us. There's our ego part, which is afraid of death. And there's another part of us, which does deny death, it's true, but it denies death because it knows that death simply doesn't exist. There's a part of us that lives in our flesh body, but continues after our flesh body dies. And it's that part of us, we might call it our spirit, we might call it our soul, we might call it our divine consciousness, but whatever we call it, it's a part of all of us. It exists in every single one of us. And it's love. It's a pure love. And if we can remember that, and that's the clue, remember, if we can just simply remember that that exists in us and in everyone else, if we can feel that perfect, beautiful, pristine part, we remember it not just for ourselves, but we begin to remember it for everybody else, because that part is one part of a collective. It's one part of wholeness. That part in us is like a fragment of a hologram. And as soon as we start remembering it, fear starts to melt away. We end our fear of transformation. So let's remember our true nature. It won't stop our flesh body dying, but because it won't stop babies being born. But what it will do is help us come together in such a way that we realize with love that life is much more about sustainability. Thank you. Thank you, Enolia.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. That was a very, very powerful delivery. And I have to thank you because you come up with a topic, and I have to acknowledge your courage that you dared actually to come up with a topic what I say 99% of the coaches, healers avoid, and that's about death and fear of death. So thank you for brought it up because yes, dying, death, it's one of humanity's biggest fear, right? But as we know, fear is just, I would say fantasized experiencing appearing real. And I loved what you said that living is a process of transition, right? We are just transitioning through life. And until you do not know who you really are, you don't really realize that you only transition in your life. You live your life, in struggle and fear, you think that you are immortal, right? And I love what you said because people live their lives thinking that they are immortal. They take everything for granted. Oh, I'm going to live forever. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pay attention to myself, right? Why should I be afraid of death if I'm trying not to think about it? So I'm just ignoring it because on the moment when they think about it, right, then fear kicks in. And I love the way that you said that ego is afraid of death. That's true. And there is that part of you which is not afraid because it knows that death doesn't exist and that's your spirit. So in a way, the thinking of human beings that they are immortal, it's valid, it's true, because they are, but they have to realize that, we are just transitioning. And I love your delivery. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that. It's amazing.
Thank you.
We need more people like you who actually dare to talk about, about death and about transitioning and about ancestors. Yes, when we die, okay, so when we, say, okay, this human body, it doesn't serve us anymore, right? The spirit says, okay, I'm just gonna transcend. The ancestors are there, but we forgot. And Enolia is good in this one because she can talk about the ancestors and being there and holding the space for you and everybody around you. People call them ghosts, right? They are not ghosts, come on. So thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you. I'm really grateful to you. Bless you. Bless all of you. Thank you.
Oh, great
And
pleasure.
blessings to you, and may your work continue, and may we hold you up.